All right, guys. Hi, welcome to the Road Grays New York Yankees podcast. Your podcast put on by a guy who lives far, too far from the house that Ruth built. So welcome. This is our first episode. How you guys doing? So we're going to be out there on all the things, YouTubes, all the podcast channels. If you go to the YouTubes, you get to see this smiling face. So without any further ado, let's hit the intro. All right, welcome, guys. Hi. So today, I think we're going to talk a little bit about some news and notes that are in the big leagues. I know it's the off season. I'm not quite there. First of all, myself, I'm Jimmy. Holy shit! It's 2 weeks until pitchers, catchers report. Grant here to talk to you about the Yankees. Moving on. So we'll do a little bit of notes, and then I think what we'll start doing is our new thing before leading up into spring training, which is going to be breaking down the Yankees' strengths by position group. Which groups are good? Which groups need work? So we'll get started today with the outfield in honor of the Cody Bellinger signing, which is part of the news and notes. So let's jump right in. News and notes. Let's do it. Okay. So kind of the only real big news we already talked about, or people have already talked about the Kyle Tucker signing and the Dodgers and how I think that's probably going to break the CBA and we're going to get a salary cap, which is unfortunate. We've also got the Major League Baseball award season is here. So one you get to see is Aaron Judge in a very large tuxedo, collecting his hardware as American League MVP for the 2025 season. Mad respect. Also, Carlos Rodon and wife getting a charitable award for being great humanitarians in their foundation. I think that's really, really cool. So not a whole lot going on. The hot stove season has cooled off quite a bit. And our big signing of recent days was obviously the re-signing of Cody Bellinger, to our outfielder, sort of kind of first baseman, but really outfielder, for a 5-year deal worth $167 million with multiple opt-outs built in. So I think it's going to be at least a 2-year deal. And then he has the option to test free agency, I think, in the 3rd year and then again in the 4th year. So very interesting there. So without further ado, though, let's get into a thing I'm going to try to do over the course of time, which is going to be breaking down the strengths and weaknesses of the New York Yankee team, obviously based on last year's performance and some swami prognostications from this guy right here, who is an alleged knower of ball, what we think we're going to look like by position group going forward. So today we're going to take a deep dive into the Yankees outfield. So who do we have in the outfield? I don't know. There might be a notable player or two. So we'll start with the obvious, the 270-pound gorilla in the room. You know him, you love him, number 99, but number 1 in your parts, Aaron Judge. So Aaron Judge is obviously a quite good player. He is the American League MVP. If you look at him break down by his stats, his WAR, depending on whether you go for the Baseball Reference or Fangraphs WAR, is either 9.7 or 10.1. So, I mean, come on. That's wins above replacement, meaning he is worth 10 games over what they would consider the Bog league average outfielder. That's pretty damn impressive. You know, how his comparables work? Well, he's the only right-handed bat in the outfield, which is kind of interesting. The Yankee team as a whole has a bit of a weakness in the fact that they are very heavily left-handed. So they probably could use some right-handed bats. He is obviously the king of right-handed bats because he absolutely is the man. Some other stats about him: his OPS over 1,100. So, I mean, come on. That's just stupid numbers right there. He hit 53 jacks last year. He bats right-handed. And if you look at his kind of baseball infographics there from the Baseball Savant website, which if you really want to get nerdy, that is a good place to get nerdy. He is going to be considered a mostly plus defender. His big weaknesses are obviously he's not fast around the base paths. He's probably not going to steal a lot of bags for you. However, he is rated as a plus defender, which he's pretty rangy and he's got a cannon for an arm. And I know there's a couple of really good scenes and some highlights from last season where he just absolutely gunned the ball in from the outfield and made some plays happen that someone with a lesser arm would not do. His only kind of real ding against him as a hitter is that he has a pretty high whiff rate and his strikeout rate is climbing up, although better in 25 than it was in 2024. So interesting there. What are you going to say about Aaron Judge? Hasn't been said before. I mean, he's going to be your starting right fielder. That's kind of a given. However, he's getting on in years. He's getting older. And I think that that's going to be part of the calculus that Aaron Boone and Cashman are going to have to play going through this outfield group. What are you going to do with him? Are you going to DH him more? That'd be a great plan, except we've got another rather large human being that kind of gets in the way of that, one Giancarlo Stanton. But we'll talk about Giancarlo Stanton in a little bit later. However, he does kind of clog up that DH spot, so it doesn't give him that much ninth man flexibility if you want to get Aaron Judge out of the field, which I think you do. He is all heart and all motor, but physics still apply. The dude is still 6'7". He's still 270 pounds. He is the size of a damn NFL tight end. And if he lays out for a ball, if he crashes into a wall, it's been a while since I took college physics, but F equals MA, and he's got a lot of M, and there's going to be a lot of force, and he's going to get hurt if he keeps playing that way. And he's well into his 30s, so you know where that physical breakdown starts. Everyone knows that, unfortunately, in the modern game, your value as a hitter is far more important than your value as a defender. It just kind of is. Hitting big league pitching is the hardest thing in the world to do, and anyone who could do it at an elite level is worth a ton more than guys who can catch the ball. So I think we all think Aaron Judge is probably a pretty good ball player, though. So let's move on to the next guy we signed, who is kind of a multi-position outfielder, Cody Bellinger. That is a pretty solid player there, too. Not obviously on the same tenet as Aaron Judge, but he's still a pretty good guy too. So what did he have last year? He was either 5.1 or 4.9 WAR. I'm going to be a pessimist from here on. I'm just going to use the lower WAR value because I'm lazy. I don't want to keep doing both of them. So he had a 4.9 WAR, so wins above replacement. So that's obviously a good player, trending on a great player, trending on a kind of borderline all-star player right there. His OPS was over 800. He had 820 OPS, so that's obviously pretty good as well. If you look at his stats, he's an average hitter. Like, he's a pretty average hitter. He has some power. He had some pop in his bat last year, and he's an elite defender. He's very, very fast. He has a great range in the outfield. He's got a good arm, and he just covers a lot of territory. Maybe his approach isn't super elite, but he makes up for just having a motor and just great high baseball IQ. He's a guy that a 50-50 ball hit in his direction in the outfield is probably going to be an out. That's just how he's wired. So I think the Yankees made a great deal. I love the fact that Cashman didn't bet against himself, or didn't, I guess, should say bid against himself. He paid what I think is a fair market value for a player. He didn't fall victim to a lot of what, guys like the Mets are doing, or the Dodgers do, which is they're just going to back up the Brinks truck when they decided they wanted someone. He was their guy. He made it abundantly clear. They let him sniff around, and they didn't get Scott Boras into signing him a $200 million value deal, which he's not a $200 million player. He just isn't. Fun fact, he will be making more than Aaron Judge in this upcoming season. So do with that information what you will. I guess it really doesn't matter. I don't think Judge gives a shit about that at this point. He's made so much dough. I think he's really interested in, can I get a ring? So that's Cody Bellinger. Some other things. Everyone touts him, and he's listed under all of his stats as a first baseman. And then if you Google it, the first thing you see is in 2019 when he played for the Dodgers, they were like, yeah, but he's not playing first base anymore. He's an outfielder. He does have it. For a lark, he is actually a three-position. He plays every position in the outfield, although I think he biases heavily in last season. He biased heavily to left field. That's just sort of how the fielding broke down with him in left, Trent Grisham in center, and Aaron Judge in right. But he could play all three positions in the outfield. More of a corner outfielder. He took, I believe he played 4 games total, and I think it was just kind of for fun, 4 games as a first baseman. Although if he still has that skill set, I think that he would make a good tool option for now. Ben Rice, remember, he was the one that when Big G was hurt, Ben Rice was filling in as DH a lot to get that hot bat into the lineup. Now he's our everyday first baseman. With Goldschmidt gone, he is the first baseman every day. Well, hopefully every day. See, we'll talk about that when we talk about position infield players, but Ben Rice has a little problem hitting lefties. That's been kind of his bugaboo for the whole season. His batting average against lefties is pretty poor. Whereas Cody Bellinger, actually, for a left-handed hitter, actually hits lefties remarkably well. So that is actually a skill he has, and I think that makes him some value added. So if we need to keep that bat in the lineup and say we want to get Aaron Judge, or we want to get either Jason Dominguez into the outfield, or we just want to give him a break from being in the outfield, I think that's a good look. Some flexibility for Aaron Boone to keep our guy in the game, keep that bat going, and keep him at first base. So then we go to Trent Grisham, who I think would probably be called the surprise guy of the offseason, at least for Cashman, because he definitely did not expect. He put out a qualifying offer, and I think Grisham took it, which I don't think Cashman expected, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he thought that was kind of just par for the course. You make that as a sort of pro forma thing, and then the player talks to his manager, and then the player goes and tries to play free agency and get a bunch of dough. He didn't do that. which leads me to believe I think there's a little bit of self-awareness on the part of Grisham. He basically hit out of his mind for him. For what his historical average, I think he's 8 seasons in the league, and his historical average for hitting the ball was not quite as good as he had last year. So his last season, he finished up with a WAR of 3.5, so 3.5 wins. So not an all-star player, but a solid, just above average, a little bit above average. And I think a lot of that was because of his bat. He does not grade out as a tremendously good defensive outfielder. He is a fair defensive outfielder. He hits left-handed, and he hit 34 jacks last year. That's where a lot of his value came into the team. He hit a bunch, and a lot of them were key. I mean, it was almost like I wish there was a stat. If you say for Major League Baseball, I wish there was a stat, I guarantee you there's a website and there's a guy in his mother's basement who has that stat for you. But I wish I had to the top of my head a stat that counts kind of like home runs and their relative value to the team, game-winning home runs, late-inning home runs. I'm sure it's out there. I mean, I don't know every stat in baseball, trust me. I'm a student of the game, but there's some that they're pretty esoteric. When they get to their 5th letter describing them, I'm kind of out. But is he hitting home runs in garbage time? If the Yankees are up 10-0 and then you hit another home run, is it worth the same as, the walk-off in the bottom of the 9th at Yankee Stadium or the 2-run shot that puts you up in the 8th in an away game? I don't know, but the argument is he hit a lot of key home runs, and he hit 35 of them. Anyone who's hitting 35 home runs on a big league roster has a spot. That's value added to the team. He does not break out, though, tremendously well as a defender. I would say he was an average to meh defender, was kind of how he broke out on from Baseball Savant and Baseball Reference, his just overall grading of how he played as a defender. He does hit righties better than lefties, so he's a little bit better against right-handed pitching, which is to be expected as a left-handed batter. Once again, outside of Aaron Judge, the whole outfield is left-handed. It's kind of interesting right there. He predominantly played center field. So he has also, I think, had some pinch hits. I think he DH'd a couple of games just as they were playing around the injury derby, but then he was predominantly a center fielder. So your starting outfield, most likely right now in 2026 on opening day, is going to be Aaron Judge at right, Trent Grisham in center, and Cody Bellinger at left. And that is honestly a very good outfield group based on WAR. But wait, what about Jason Dominguez, I hear you say? Well, great question. Let's talk about Jason Dominguez. So first of all, it feels like he's been in the season a while because this will be his 3rd year in the bigs, but it turns out Jason Dominguez is only 22. He's a young dude. He was the shiny thing of prospects. Every shiny prospect, he was the shiny prospect for a while. He brings some value to the team in that he is a switch hitter. That's a lot of value. If you can be good. Now, let's just say I could be a switch hitter, except I don't hit left-handed. I look like there's a question, there's a thing, do you sure you're left-handed? If I batted lefty, you'd wonder if I had arms. That's how bad I am. But I could call myself a switch hitter. He's an okay hitter from both sides of the plate, although he definitely biases to one side of the plate versus the other. So as a switch hitter, he bats better lefty. So he hits right-handed pitching, he bats better lefty. Gee, big surprise. Turns out we're still heavily left-handed in this lineup. It would be really cool if he could try getting his batting average. I think he hits about 60 points better against right-handed pitching. If he could hit from the other side of the plate as a righty, I think that would really, really help his value because he's kind of in a weird logjam. We'll talk about that in a minute. He had 10 home runs last year, predominantly played left field, although he did pinch hit a couple of times and he DH'd a few games as well. I think during some weird periods in the summer where there was just some injury or Aaron Moon just was trying to figure out the lineup. Remember the rotating leadoff hitter last year who's going to hit leadoff? I don't know, but someone apparently. So there you go, Jason Dominguez. So where does he fit right now? Is he a bench player? I mean, yeah, I guess. Right now, if you had me making the lineup card for day one, he's a bench player. He's going to be the fill-in for a rest day, get someone DH spot, get out there in the outfield. Why? He is not a good defender. At least he has not been historically as an outfielder. He's kind of a disaster, actually, as a defender, which is an interesting thing to think about. He has speed. Like, he's shocking. You look at him, he seems like kind of a biggish dude, kind of built, and he's fast on the base paths. He can move. But for some reason in the outfield, he's just not a good defender at the moment. Now, is he going to be a better defender? Maybe. Do we care? I don't know. That's the question. You could make that argument. I talked about it before. You could very easily make an argument that a player is more valuable as a hitter in this league than they are. I believe I was listening to somebody the other day, and they were talking about how probably an elite high school level, so a senior high school level guy, someone who is probably going to get drafted out of high school, could probably get put in to a skill position, defensive position play in Major League Baseball and probably play okay as a defender. You make the throws. I mean, at that point, by the time you're in high school, the field isn't any different size. The bases aren't any further apart. The ball's the same size. They can throw real hard. Where they're going to make their money is they're not going to hit. That's a lot. If you ever talk about it, most of the time when they're talking about guys coming up, what's the first metric when they talk about prospects in the minors? He hit 500 in Double A, so he got promoted. Or he made it to Triple A and he's only hitting 125. Very, very rarely do they ever talk about, hey, his defensive acumen or his ability to field. So maybe the Yankees don't care for Jason Dominguez. Maybe they want him to hit. As a switch hitter, if he can get better from the other side of the plate and he can hit better as a righty, he does bring a lot of value as a DH, because you can now have him in that rotation and you're kind of, again, depending on the starting pitcher, you're pretty much set either way. That's helpful. But right now, no, he is not a very good defensive outfielder. So that'll bring up a question in a minute. So there's our first logjam. We already had a 4-man outfield. But wait, you prognosticator of ball, I hear you say. What about everyone's favorite prospect, Spencer Jones? Well, I think he's fallen off of everyone's favorite prospect list because he was the shiny thing. He isn't the shiny thing anymore. But he is, in fact, he was a top-notch prospect. He was drafted 25th overall in the first round. He signed almost $3 million signing bonus 2 years ago. So he is a prospect. And how do you get him to the show? He's moving up. I mean, that is true. He started out 2 seasons ago in the 24 season with coming out of Vanderbilt at rookie ball. So low rookie ball, I think he lasted 3 games in rookie ball before he got promoted to low A. He finished the season at Double A Somerset, started last season at Double A Somerset, and then I think he made it about 2 months or so up to Scranton for the Triple A. And in his Triple A appearances, he was hitting over 300, and he had 20. What do you have? Let me check my notes here. I got to check my notes. He had 19 home runs in a little less than 2 months in Triple A. So everyone was like, holy crap. Couple things. Let's, as we slow our roll, let's remember Triple A pitching is not Major League pitching. Also, AAA pitching at the end of the season is not necessarily AAA pitching, representative of AAA pitching writ large. What do I say? Why do I say that? Well, pitching prospects at the trade deadline are typically go from good teams that are trying to get, MLB players, the buyers at the trade deadline. They're usually packaged to bad teams. So a lot of times those bad teams will call these guys up. They'll burn an option on them because they want to see what they got. They want to see kind of if that trade made them some value or not. Also, the rosters start expanding towards the end of the Major League, the September deadline for the Major League season, but also is towards the end of the season for Scranton. So you have call-ups during the season. You have more call-ups as the rosters expand. So I think pitching could be a bit depleted. So that's something. The other problem, and this is his big bugaboo, if we're going to use that word, is strikeouts. He strikes out a lot. His strikeout rate is climbing, and it is causing the pundits, the people that question these things, to not want to rate him very high. The highest he rated in the top 100 prospects was 88th in his first season. Last season, he ranked 97th, I think, out of the top 100 prospects. This year for the 2026 season, he didn't make the list. And the number one thing that all of the scouts have against him is his strikeout rate is through the roof. It's over 37%. That's bad. And that's against minor league pitching. He hasn't even come up to the show and faced major league pitching yet. So what do you do with him? What do you do with the outfield with him and Dominguez? Because otherwise, he also can hit bombs. And we would have, I think if you wanted to play basketball with your outfielders, we'd have the biggest outfield. If he came up and played regular outfield on the opposite side as Judge, we'd have the biggest outfield in the big leagues. He's 6'7" as well and over 250 pounds. And he's probably going to fill out a bit, Big dude, powerful dude. So what do you do? How do you get there? Do you get him up to the leagues? Do you call him up? What do you do with Jason Dominguez? Well, that's an interesting point to talk about. But before we get to kind of those futures, let's finish out our grading of the outfield. So I'm looking at our outfield by WAR. You got to find an apples to apples comparison. And by WAR, if you come up with a cumulative WAR, it's 18.1, which is pretty impressive. If you take the average WAR, now I'm saying that I'm doing this with the starting lineup of Judge, Bellinger, Grisham. with that lineup, I came up with my calculations to a over 6 WAR. And if you look at Baseball Reference, they have actually them ranked out as an 8.1 WAR, and they actually have them ranked as the best outfield by WAR in the big leagues for 2025. So assuming no major regressions and assuming no major injuries, and we're gonna knock on wood for that one, then I think this is a very good position group for the Yankees. This is a position of strength. They've got an embarrassment of riches. They've got a couple of prospect type players that they don't even know what to do with, but their everyday players are really good. So I'm going to give this position group an A, just an A rating. They're really good. So that leads us to the Jason Dominguez and largely also Spencer Jones conundrum. Which is, what do you do? All right, I'm done. Fuck. All right, so I'll have to cut that out. So sorry. Anyway, so that leaves us with our outfield conundrum, if you will, which is, what do we do about Jason Dominguez? Well, if you want to trade him or not trade him, I guess the real question is going to be, what's the value of Jason Dominguez? That's the thing I don't fully get. He is proven himself to be not a great outfielder, but he also doesn't get as many reps and sets. The Yankees are kind of dialed in that position. So does another team take his flyer on him and say he's an everyday starting outfielder? Probably. There's teams out there that will do that. And he is a switch hitter who can hit for power. So he has a potential to be a DH. Same reason why we may want to keep him. But if he doesn't get reps and sets in the big leagues, he's not going to develop. And he is only 22. So I think it's a little young, a little premature to call him a bust yet. I think he is a bench player this year. But what the problem is that makes a block for Spencer Jones, who we don't have any big league info. He hasn't been up yet, and he's already 24. This will be his age 25 season. So he's already knocking on the door of this would be the year. He's going to get a big league camp invite. He already has last year. He's going to get a big league camp invite. And he's probably going to start the year at Scranton in AAA. I don't think he's going back down to Somerset. I think he's going to start the year AAA. I mean, unless he has a really bad spring training, you wouldn't expect him to not. I mean, he was hitting the ball a ton, minus the strikeouts, which is important. But what do we do with him? Is he a trade chip that we can value? I mean, he is a former first-round pick that has some intrinsic value to it. However, there's quite a few teams that may have the same thing. They all can read the same stats. And if they have the same stat line of, hey, he strikes out a lot, then maybe not. But here's the big but. He's built like a guy that everyone knows who occasionally did strike out a lot, but also hits nukes. And that is one Aaron Judge. So if everyone thinks that he's Aaron Judge 2.0, there's a good chance that maybe we make a deal and Cashman gets us some value for it. Otherwise, we really have to make a decision whether or not we bring him up. Is this the year? Because let's be honest with you, we're going to run into some opportunity to DH here this year, because you know as well as I do that Giancarlo Stanton's going to probably get hurt. He's a big, strong dude, but he's in his 30s. He's injury prone. He torques the living bejesus out of the bat, and he tends to get hurt. So we're going to and we're also, Ben Rice covered down a lot as a DH, but Ben Rice is now our everyday first baseman. So either we're going to make a midseason move to bring in a DH, or that's going to give somebody an opportunity to hit. My argument would be probably Dominguez would get more at-bats at DH, and then maybe you bring up Spencer Jones, you burn an option on him, he's getting on in years, and we can see. There really a lot is going to depend on whether or not he's got the strikeouts a little bit more under control this season. That's going to very much determine his trade value, and that's going to determine his value to this team. Like, they're going to either want him or not based on that. So a lot to think about here with our boy Spencer Jones. If it were up to me, if I were writing the script, if I were Cashman right now, I would probably try to keep both of them. But if I had to trade someone right now today, I'm more inclined to trade Spencer Jones. I think there's some meat on the bone for Dominguez. I think he probably grades out as a DH. I think if he can work better learning to hit right-handed, then I think he's a value-added DH, and he's a lot younger. He's a lot younger. Now, he doesn't have any, he's going to go into, he's already got, a full season and a half of service time, so he's getting ready to go into arbitration, and that's going to be, and I think he has one more season, and then he's ARB eligible. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. I'm not 100% certain where he is at that contract side. So he's going to start costing more money pretty soon, but he's also only 22 years old, where if you don't bring up Spencer Jones this year, then you're going to start thinking maybe he's going to be 26 before he gets his first look at the bigs. And he may go back down. I mean, there's a reason why they have options. And if he goes back down a few times, he's knocking on the door of his age 28 or 29 season potentially before he's even into the thing. Now, you'll still have team control. And on the plus side, you're probably not going to have to, you may not have to pay him the big contract because he may not be playing long enough at a high enough level because he gets old. So if you're looking for the heir apparent to Aaron Judge, knowing that Aaron Judge is in his 30s, and there's typically a fall off, and at some point we're going to want to look for an off ramp from him being an everyday outfielder to him being the DH or maybe first base or something. I don't think he grades out the hot corner. I think they'd move him to first, but over to whatever. What do you do? I argue that I was probably, as a general manager, I would probably take full advantage. If we're buyers at the trade deadline, and God, I hope we are, then I would take full advantage of some other team's delusion of Aaron Judginess. If it looks like Judge and sounds like Judge. In other words, it's really friggin' tall and plays outfield. Then maybe we can make some value out of that. I mean, you're not going to get much more. You're not going to get huge value out of a real overpay out of Jason Dominguez because I think there's enough tape on him. People know what he is and they know what they have with him. Whereas I think with Aaron Judge, or with Spencer Jones, people are going to have their Aaron Judge fantasy. Maybe he's the diamond in the rough. Maybe he gets his strikeouts down under 15% and now he's hitting nukes and he's Aaron Judge 2.0 and now we've got our MVP. So that's the thought. So there you have it. Our outfield group for the New York Yankees in 2026. Me, knower of ball. Sorry. I grade this out as an A. Probably one of the strongest position groups we have. And largely that's because of Aaron Judge. That's disproportionate. If Aaron Judge was a pitcher, then our pitchers would be great. If Aaron Judge was a second baseman, then our middle infielders would be great, if you know what I'm saying. But that's what I'm going with right now. I'm going to say that it's an A group with a lot of potential and an embarrassment of riches. We'll try to see what they do with Jason Dominguez, and we'll see what they do with Spencer Jones. Anyway, that's all I got for you for today's pod. Thanks for tuning in. We should be out there on all of the normal podcasts if you just want to hear my voice droning in your ears. Otherwise, tune into the YouTube channel right here. Subscribe, do all those things because we are here every week with Yankees pods. Plus, any other kind of stuff you want to see, we'll make up some pop-ups as news happens here in the hot stuff season. So until next time, guys, it's Jimmy. We'll see you next time.